sex is part of a relationship. It's not separate from it. So when your relationship suffers, your sex life is likely going to take a hit and vice versa. And so it's so important that couples prioritize both what's going on inside the bedroom and also what's happening outside of the bedroom.
Welcome to the Get Your Marriage On podcast. I'm your host, Dan Purcell, a Christian marriage and intimacy expert and coach. I'm on a mission to help couples have the best sex and most emotionally intimate marriages possible. Our episodes cover topics you've always wondered about and are packed with practical advice designed to help you take your marriage to the next level. Years ago, Dr. Morgan Cutlip, who is my guest on this episode today, made her first appearance on my podcast, and if you want to listen to it, it's episode number 50. What she taught me then about the mental load made a deep impression on me. The mental load, as it's often called, is this invisible, never-ending to-do list that usually is carried more by the wives and husbands in marriages, even if both spouses are working. It's the ever-present mental load of things that are still works in progress that occupy the back of our mind. Not surprisingly, the mental load issue carries its effects into the intimate relationship as well. Ever be in the middle of enjoying lovemaking, and the next thing you know, you're wondering about whether or not you have enough milk in the fridge for breakfast, or what your kids are going to put in their lunches for their upcoming field trip? And when you think about the field trip, you think, oh yeah, did I ever sign that permission slip? Oh, and that reminds me, I need to talk to my student's teacher about their grade. And so you make a mental note about needing to talk to their teacher. And anyway, oh yeah, we're right here with my spouse. We're naked. We're bodies are tucked into each other, and we're supposed to be enjoying this moment. Well, maybe I'm the only one that's ever experienced that before. At any rate, this is what we get to explore today in depth on today's episode with Dr. Morgan Cutlip. I read her recently published book called A Better Share: How Couples Can Tackle the Mental Load for More Fun, Less Resentment, and Great Sex. We especially get to explore the great sex portion of her book in this episode. And I've got something special just for you, my listeners. My team and I created a resource to help you tackle the mental load in your marriage so you can have a better sexual relationship too. It's a resource and a how-to guide that would make for a great date night. It's tricky for couples to know where to start when it comes to sharing the mental load better in the marriage, so we've taken all the guesswork out for you. What we've done is, among other things, created this post-it note templates. You put blank post-it notes on these templates that you get in the kit, you feed it through your printer, and it'll produce over 100 conversation starters. And you can put these post-it notes on your wall in your bedroom and spark conversations around getting better at sharing various aspects of your relationship. Anyway, this resource is on sale on our website, and the link is in the show notes below. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Dr. Morgan Cutlip. Dr. Morgan, welcome back, I guess I should say, to the Get Your Marriage On podcast. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. I have in my hand a copy of your latest book, A Better Share, and it's fantastic, by the way. I hope everyone listening to this episode buys a copy. But the tagline is, How Couples Can Tackle Mental Load for More Fun, Less Resentment, and Great Sex. Which begs the question, Morgan, have you always had a great sex life?
Well, thank you for having me. It's so great to be here. Okay, funny story. It was not many years ago. I actually was on this sort of path in our relationship where I was regularly begging my husband to take me out on a date.
Uh-huh.
As we know, like when you have kids, things just get busy and it's hard to find time. And I was regularly like, can we just go out? Can we just go to dinner? So we finally,
romance.
Yes,
Please.
I need some romance. Like, please, I need to remember what this feels like, the two of us. And so he sets up this date night. We go out to this really nice Mexican restaurant, and we're sitting there. And I remember he says to me, I need to talk with you about something. And my husband is a man of very few words. And so anytime he's like, I gotta talk to you about something, I immediately perk up. I'm like, tell me, what's the gossip? Fill me in. What's the juice? I want it all. And he leans in and he's like, I'm not very happy with our sex life. And it was such a record screeching moment for me in our relationship because...
Not what you were expecting.
No, and like, thanks for ruining a date night, and thanks for teasing me with the prospect of good conversation. So I felt really kind of like tricked a little bit.
Uh-huh.
But I remember just, my first response was a little bit of defensiveness
Uh-huh.
because, I'm like very self-aware and very aware that I tend to have the lower desire in our relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep track. I keep track of how often we have sex. He'll be like, "It's been like
Uh-huh.
2 weeks." I'm like, "We had sex 3 times this week." Like,
Uh-huh.
I'm remembering.
Uh-huh.
And so I said to him, I was like, "Oh, okay. I feel like we have sex quite a bit. So
Uh-huh.
what do you mean?" And he goes, "It's not the amount. It's not that it's not great. It's that you just don't seem that to me."
Uh-huh.
And this was sort of so your question, have I always had great sex? According to my husband, not always. But it
Uh-huh.
was really this like launching point into a really meaningful conversation in our relationship and ultimately some pretty massive changes in our relationship. And, after I did quite a bit of self-reflection, something that I really realized was that he needed more enthusiasm from me in the bedroom, but I was having a hard time tapping into that enthusiasm because I felt like I didn't receive much of that outside of the bedroom.
Yeah. He needed to be more enthused out of the bedroom too, is
Yes.
what from what you could see, right?
Well, even, yeah, and even, this whole like begging for a date night, I remember as part of our conversation, I said to him, these are foreplay for this
Mm-hmm.
feels like we have this time to connect and you're pursuing me and you
Mm-hmm.
desire to be with me in other ways besides in the bedroom. And so it really opened up a deep and meaningful conversation to shift our relationship in some pretty significant ways.
But I'm curious, so that date night, revelation, I guess you could call it, to being able to put it in words that, wait, he wants more enthusiasm in the bedroom and I want more enthusiasm out of the bedroom. Was that in the same conversation or did that kind of evolve as you talked and got more clarity about what's going on?
No, that was not a great date night. Let's just be clear.
Uh,
That date night, you know that moment where you're like in a conversation and all of a sudden you're in the weeds and you're like, how do we get here? This has not gone as I planned it to go. So
right.
that date night didn't end so great. We ended up
Hmm.
both, I think, feeling hurt and him probably feeling like I didn't hear it fully and me feeling like you don't get it. And
Hmm.
so it was a conversation we had to return to. And I think it was probably the next day that we returned to it and was like, okay, let's talk about, what you're wanting in terms of enthusiasm. And are you okay if I share some of my perspective with you? Because, it's a tricky in those conversations where you don't want it to feel like, well, you came with a complaint and now I have all these complaints, right? Or it's this tit for
Yeah, yeah,
tat
yeah.
thing. So yeah,
Hmm.
so it took a little time for us both to kind of settle in, take a break, and circle back.
Okay, there's so many wonderful micro lessons in just that one thing, but let's just focus on a few today. Now, in your book, you do a lot of research on what gets in the way of sexual desire for a lot of women. And you mentioned three specific things. Can we dive into those a bit? Because they're fantastic. And I think they're all tied to this concept of mental load and how to share it better.
Yeah, so there's three main ways that the mental load specifically will impact desire. So just for a broad definition, the mental load is this sort of seemingly never-ending running to-do list we carry around in our brains that take up a bunch of
Yes.
space and that also tend to be filled with invisible tasks. And because this stuff is invisible, it's hard to hand off and it's hard to get appreciation around. So the first way it relates to desire is that a lot of the mental load of home and family life, and research shows this, it
Uh
tends to
huh.
fall on women's plate. If they're
Yep.
working part-time, full-time, doesn't matter, it still falls on their plates. And so women are sort of walking around, and a lot of our partners can attest to this experience of us, but we're walking
Mm-hmm.
around with really full brains. And we tend to carry all of this into the bedroom. And what is in our head crowds out our ability to tap into our desire. And
Uh huh.
so it shuts down desire when we have these busy minds. So that's the first thing. The
Mm-hmm.
second is that, engaging in our sexual relationship is really vulnerable. For
Yeah.
a lot of women, to get in the mood for sex, we have to feel connected. It's like my date night request. Or my
Yes.
husband, he teases me because I do this thing. He travels a lot. And
Uh
so
huh.
he comes home and sex is his bridge back to connection. So he
Uh
comes
huh.
home from travel. He wants to have sex to feel connected. And then we'll be in bed. And right, before whatever he initiates, I end up starting this really deep conversation. It's like,
Right.
why
About
are you
something unrelated, right?
Yeah, it's like, why do you do this? But it's because I'm needing that connection before I can reach a
Uh-huh.
place of vulnerability. And so maybe it's just needing more connection that is necessary for a lot of women specifically to find their desire, or it's that they're in a relationship where they might not feel heard. There might be some resentment developing or already developed, or they feel like maybe their partner isn't somebody that they can reliably turn to when they need whatever, something to change, emotional support, when they're making a request. And so it doesn't feel safe to enter into this vulnerable experience. So that's a second. The third is that a lot of times when women try to talk with their partners around the mental load, it's met with kind of three categories of responses, either defensiveness, dismissiveness, or this sort of hardship Olympics. And
Uh-huh.
when this happens, a lot of women will get louder. So
Uh-huh.
they'll start chasing, he's not hearing me, I need you to do this. And so it creates a parent-child dynamic. So the
Yes.
woman starts to feel like a nagging mother, and her partner starts to feel like a child. And this is
Mm-hmm.
it's just not sexy. I mean, there's really no other way to say it. And she'll
Uh-huh.
develop likely some resentment around the fact that she's occupying this position now.
Yeah. And speaking of parent-child dynamics, we are biologically programmed not to find our children sexually desirable,
Right.
right? So in
Yes.
a marriage, when it no longer is like, husband and wife, it feels more like parent-child. Sexual desire for that spouse is going to really go out the window. So
Yes.
you got to work on that through. There's something else, you're talking about how we come to bed with a full head. And you told me this once before about you got to turn off the head to turn on the body for a lot of women. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're like the science research on women's fantasies, many of them have a fantasy of really being taken, really being ravished in a way.
Yeah.
And in the fantasy, the reason why they're so appeal is I don't have to think about it. I don't have
Mm-hmm.
to take care of anyone. I just attend to my pleasure and everything's taken care of for me. And I think that idea is really compelling and really appealing. And so we need to take these concepts and take them seriously in our marriages if we're going to have a better sexual relationship and really work on building that trust, like you said, to having a relationship we can actually have this vulnerable and exciting time together with.
Absolutely. I mean, it's wild how it just starts to all kind of meld together. I say sex is part of a relationship. It's not separate from it. So when your relationship suffers, your sex life is likely going to take a hit and vice versa. And so
Mhm.
it's so important that couples prioritize both what's going on inside the bedroom and also what's happening outside of the bedroom.
That's good. So this concept of sharing the load is something I've been really interested in my own marriage. I can attest to how it's really helped us in our relationship. But I really want to hear your tips, your advice. How do you even broach? Let's start there. How do you broach the conversation? Let's say you're the wife or listening in this podcast and you're like, this is something we really need to address. I don't want to sound like a nag, but this is something where I want more enthusiasm, please, out of the bedroom. How do you broach or conversation starters? What are your strategies for that?
Yes. So part of it is a little bit of knowing, and it's a little bit of insight into what your partner is like, because there's different frameworks you can use depending on how potentially defensive they'll get. So let's assume you have a partner who's likely to get defensive. So let's just take
Uh
that
huh.
worst case approach.
Uh huh.
Also is very common. So I
Yep.
surveyed over 535 women, and one of the most common responses they get when they try to talk about it is defensiveness from their partner. So just know if you're in that camp, you have a lot of company. So the first piece is you want to really just set up the conversation in a way that will give you the highest likelihood of success. And so it might sound something like this. There's something that's on my mind that I really want to talk with you about. If your partner is going to get all squeamish, you can right off the
Uh
bat
huh.
say, "We're okay. I love you. You're safe
Uh huh.
here. Don't worry. I'm not going to be mad at you, but I need to talk about something that's very important. Is
Uh
now a
huh.
good time?" So that first piece is you're checking in. Almost always they'll say it's a great time, even when it's not, but it's
Uh
helpful
huh.
to ask. The second piece
By the
is
way, could I just comment?
yes.
Is there ever really a good time? Because when
No.
things are going well, you're
No.
like, I don't want to rock the boat. And when
I
things are
know.
bad,
It's the
they get
worst
worse.
time.
So.
It's better. I know the best time to talk about stuff is when things are relatively good, but nobody wants to do that because you're standing this high likelihood of it becoming bad. So
Right.
I'm sorry, but that's the best time to talk. So the second piece is you can hedge the defensiveness. Now, some people love this, some people hate it. So, user discretion advised. But basically, you say something like, the thing that I want to talk with you about has been on my mind and on my heart for a very long time. And I am feeling kind of nervous about bringing this up because I'm worried that you're going to respond with defensiveness. And it took me a lot of energy and courage to bring this to you. And so if you respond with defensiveness, I'm worried that I'm just going to shove it down and it's ultimately going to impact our relationship. So do you think you can hear me without responding in a defensive way? They're going to say yes. And that might not be, that might not actually hold them accountable. But when
They're not saying, what do you mean defensive? I
yeah,
get defensive.
yeah. Yeah, you're like, you're doing it right now. So you're stepping in with a sense of vulnerability, which helps to lower defensiveness. You're also putting it out on the table, calling it out. This might happen, which does two things. So it's going to slow down their thinking. If they start to get defensive, they're going to be like, oh, I just got called out on this. Am I going to actually prove them right? And we kind of have this inner stubbornness that shows up. So you're hoping they'll sort of stop it. Or they're going to get defensive anyway. And if they get defensive anyway and they said they wouldn't, you can say something along the lines of, can we hit pause? Do we need a break? Or what are you hearing me say right now? And you can real time edit the interaction by slowing down the conversation. So that's all the setup. The next introduction piece is very important. And what is so important about this is you're going to frame the mental load and all of the relentless amount of tasks that we have on our plates as the shared enemy of your relationship.
Right. So we're both on the same side.
Yes.
And the tasks were there. It's not me against you. We're a team together.
We're externalizing the problem. And this is not how the mental load is traditionally talked about. If you consume any social media on this topic, it's usually pretty hostile. It's kind of it's a triggering topic for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So some people don't like that I say this, and I'll just say, and I don't think that's probably your audience, but I'll just say, if you want to get to the end goal of finding fairness in your relationship, of your relationship feeling good, then this is the best chance you have of having a productive conversation. So
that's true.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we miss that sometimes when we're angry about things. So if I had to script it out, I would just say, if you've probably noticed that I've been really stressed and overwhelmed, usually our partners feel our stress tornado, self. And I realize it has a term. There's actually a word for this. It's called the mental load. And it's basically this running to-do list I carry around in my head. You have one too. And the mental load of modern family life is almost too much for a family to be able to handle. And we are up against this. And the way that we're navigating it right now isn't feeling good for me. And I'm worried is affecting our relationship. So I want to talk together about how we can approach it in a new way so we both feel good about how we navigate this part of our home.
That is so good. All right. You have the conversation. How do you take apart the hundreds of things in your head? Do you dump it all at once and say, let's fix this all in one sitting? Or what's a good process for that? What's been your experience, I guess?
Yeah, my experience is that it's not always about the logistics. And I think that is one big go-to that we tend to think of when we think of the mental load. Oh, we just have to dump everything out and then we need to reshuffle who does what. So sometimes that's the case. Sometimes.
It's like me going to my wife and saying, oh, I can see you're stressed. I'll go to the grocery store for you. Make me a list and then I'll go do it for you. And the idea of her stopping to make a list to give something to me doesn't help.
No.
It's worse. She would rather go to the store and walk up and down the aisles in the moment and go, oh yeah, I need that. Oh yeah, I need that. Rather than try to come up with I don't
Yes,
see that.
it's more work sometimes
It's more work
to spell it
sometimes.
out, to spell it
So we
out.
think logistics is a solution, and it's not. There's something more to this.
There's more to this. So yeah, a lot of times the make me a list thing is very triggering for a lot of
Mm-hmm.
women for the very reason that you said. So there's a lot of, I mean, there's a lot of ways to approach this. So I'll just give a couple of examples. I mean, overall, what you're trying to do is you're trying to make the invisible more visible to the partner who's carrying less. And there's
Right.
lots of ways of doing this. So anyway, let me just give some very practical, kind of tangible
Great.
tips. One thing is you may have to do the thing that you described. You list it out, you renegotiate, you look at all the nitty gritty, and you're like, who's picking up the, throw blankets and folding them and putting them back. You're looking at the nitty gritty, maybe.
Yeah.
However, that's very intimidating. I want to throw out there that sometimes we can look at what we're doing as a couple and we can hand off one major thing that unpacks to include a lot of steps. So in the book, I give a really in the weeds definition of the mental load so people really understand it. And part of the definition is that each task of home and family life unpacks to include a lot of little micro tasks that take up a lot of space and energy. So for example, in my own marriage, husband travels every week. So it's really difficult to have any 50-50. I mean, 50-50 is out the window. I actually don't think that's a great measure. But, and to really even have him consistently be reliable about carrying certain things because he's in and out. So we need more
Right.
flexibility. So years ago, we looked at stuff and I handed off finances. First of all, I have no business managing our finances. I'm a creative person. I am not a business person. He's in business. Every month he was kind of like, how we doing, babe? I'm like, we're going to make it. And he's like, what are you talking about? Like, we're fine. Where's our money? So I handed that off. But finances unpacks to include a ton of things. It's, it's our investments. It's our kids' college funds. It's calling insurance companies when we get billed incorrectly. It's all of these other tasks that actually take up a ton of space and energy. And so we didn't need to do the nitty gritty. First of all, I just needed to hand off one huge thing that actually took up a ton of space and energy and a ton of time. So I just want to put that out there for couples who feel kind of intimidated by this idea of really getting into the weeds on this and say, maybe there's some big things that you can think about that you can hand off. Another thing, there's so many tips that I could give, so I'm really trying to be selective.
Let's do it. Let's hear
here.
them.
Okay, I'm trying to be selective. So I'll say another thing is, okay, this is a call to action usually to the husbands, and usually, so I'm painting with broad strokes, but they tend to be the one who's not carrying as much in home and family life. So when I surveyed women, one of the things they wanted the most was more initiative taking. I believe that in our relationships, one of the biggest mistakes we make when making a request is that we make a request for a change without a clear deliverable. And so we say things like, I want more romance, or I want you to do more. But there's
Yes.
what does that mean? It's not clear. So what is initiative taking? Men or the non-default partner need to step into initiative taking. And I have a formula for that. And my formula is knowing plus action is what is really required for initiative taking. This is why a lot of times women are really good at anticipating needs and taking initiative, is that we have a very deep knowing of members of our family.
Right.
And so for men to step into this, you have to increase your knowledge. So the way that you increase your knowledge in a very practical, measurable way is something that I call out in the book called the Buffett formula. And it's really around the accumulation of knowledge, just from Warren Buffett. And the idea is that every night when you go to bed, you need to know something more than when you woke up that morning. So I challenge men or non-default partners to get to know 3 things every single day. One new thing about your wife, one new thing about your children if you have them, and one new thing about how your home and family life functions. If you do that every single day.
That's homework for life.
Homework for life, because that's 21 things a week. And you'll just notice it feels good to be in the know. And you can love and care for the people you care so deeply about so much better with so much more confidence and competence. So it really helps men feel good when they step into initiative taking, instead of that It's called weaponized incompetence. I do not like that term very much, but a lot of men will do things like, or say things like,
Oh, I know. I'm
yes,
very intimately familiar with weaponized incompetence.
it's not my favorite. I know that it happens, and sometimes it's weaponized. I just think just assuming intentions can be detrimental. But what happens a lot of times is that the men don't feel confident, and so they'll say things like, "I don't know how to do it," or "You do it better than me," but they're out of the
Yes.
know, or they've tried and they got corrected, and so they're like, "Why bother?
Yeah.
I
Right,
don't
right,
get it
right.
right." So
And it's weaponized when they use that to get out of stuff. Like, I have a
to
joke
get out of
about a
stuff,
husband.
yes,
Right. He's in the kitchen making cookies, intentionally wrong, knowing his wife will walk by, say, "What are you doing?" And then making cookies like, "No, you're doing it wrong." So she'll
yeah.
take over and make the cookies and everything. So he can go back to playing video games and get cookies
Yes.
given
Oh
to him,
gosh.
right?
Oh my
Right?
gosh.
But all
Yes.
along it was like that was the plan.
That's so malicious.
It is.
I
It's
know.
it's
Yeah,
supposed
I
to be
know there
funny.
are it is funny. And I know there are I don't remember my son. I caught my son doing it the other day and I was like, "Uh-uh."
Uh-huh.
So I know
It's
that
malicious, it's manipulative, and
it
it's
is
not good in a
manipulative.
relationship.
No, it's not good. And
But
sometimes
people do it
that's
all
what
the
it
time in our
is. Yep,
relationships, right?
they
Mhm.
do. Yeah.
Yep.
And so sometimes it is weaponized and sometimes it is this sort of pattern that's developed based on previous interactions. And it develops into this almost like this like helpless passivity
Yes.
in the relationship.
But there's
Oh,
two sides to that. Like,
yes.
in the cookie example, the wife is the one stepping up and saying, "Oh, you're so incompetent.
Yeah.
I have to do everything for you." Yet she's still doing it.
Yeah.
It just keeps it. So, uh,
Oh
anyway,
yeah. And
there's a
the
dynamic there. There's
100%.
there's two sides.
In the book, I have a line that says, with weaponized incompetence, you have to starve it, not feed it. So
Yeah.
if she walks by, she sees the cookies being made incorrectly, and she's like, "You might want to double check your recipe," and she moves on with her life. Like you don't
Yeah.
rescue, you do not feed that.
Yeah, exactly. That's good. That's good. Just one more thought on this. This
Mhm.
is the classic funny example of like, no, you're loading the dishwasher wrong.
Mm.
I have to do it for you. And part of when you say, no, your job is dishes, you take it over, you kind of got
Yeah,
to let go a little bit too, right?
yeah. There's
In the way
there's
they do it, let them
yes.
do it their way.
It's wild. When I was writing the book, one of my biggest struggles. I remember I had this huge whiteboard wall of just examples because there's so much nuance in these situations. So the loading the dishwasher. On one hand, sometimes we need to check our expectations. Is this really something? Is this the hill we want to die on? Like, is this
Yeah.
dishwasher issue really important? If it is, the
And
hill,
it might be in
it
some
might be. For
situations. So
some people, it
there's
is.
nuance. Hmm.
Absolutely. And so I walk couples through in the book, how do you really kind of check your expectations, explore them, and I say you got to either let them go, lighten up, or they're going to have to level up. So you have these kind of options for how you navigate these things. But if the dishwasher is the hill you want to die on, let's just say, a couple of
Hmm.
things. Number one, maybe you just want to take that on yourself. If that's important to you, that it's done in a particular way, then you should maybe own that task
Hmm.
and be okay with it.
Hmm.
Or another option is that you might do some on the job training. And this is not something that I think should be ongoing because that's the problem when you have to keep sort of reminding.
Right. Hmm.
But if you're like this dishwasher thing's really near and dear to my heart, and so can we set aside 10 minutes where I show you exactly how I want it done and you can ask me any questions and then we are done talking about this
Yes.
and now you know. And so there are options if there's a task that's very near and dear to you that is done in a particular way. And then the other side of that is that sometimes when you hand stuff off, you gotta get out of the way. You know, you have to let each other have some grace, some space to just figure it out, to find your own way, and to have a little bit of failure potentially without being sort of, walking on eggshells or nagged about it.
Great. So some people take this information that they're in a marriage where they do want more sex. They want more enthusiasm with sex. And so they go, okay, I get it now. I just need to pick up the house more. I need to do more chores. They call it chore play is a new foreplay. Uh, and yet it's not yielding the results in the bedroom like they would like. What has gone wrong there?
Yeah, I believe there was a study that said that this sort of mental load piece can negatively impact desire in your sex life, but it won't necessarily bring it back automatically when
Mhm.
it's repaired or done a little bit differently. So a lot of times, a couple will be in a pattern of things feeling kind of unfair or inequitable for a while. So then things start to erode. There's some resentment, some frustration, some irritation. The sex life starts to suffer. And so there's been this kind of slow deterioration of the connection. So then the partner starts stepping in more, doing more, and they're like, "Hey, you ready?" Like it's like at
Uh-huh.
this point, there's like a little bit of damage that's been done to the relationship. And so you're
Uh-huh.
moving
Uh-huh.
in the right direction, but it's going to require both partners to sort of kind of like step toward each other. So for the partner who's
To-
now stepping up, doing a bit more, you're going to need to have some patience. Don't empty the dishwasher and expect to be paid in the bedroom. you know,
Uh-huh.
you're gonna have to like work a little bit on creating a feeling of safety and reliability. Is this okay? He's doing it now, but is he gonna keep doing it? You sort of have to prove out over time that they can trust you. For the person who's developed some of this resentment, this frustration, you're gonna have to take some ownership over reworking your attitude towards your partner, how you see them, so that you can tap into feelings of warmth and connection again. And that's gonna require almost, it's a long answer, so I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty, but it's going to require kind of revising the sort of narrative you've written around your partner. So you're focusing now on some of the ways they're really showing up for you instead of continuing to focus on the ways they've let you down. So it's a rebuilding of your intimacy and your connection.
That's good. In your book, you have these amazing conversation starters about sex and how to work better together as a couple, have a better sex life. What's one of them?
This one is one of my favorite questions for couples to unpack, and it is, how do you think I feel about you when our sex life isn't what you want it to be?
Okay. It sounds a little tricky, but what you're
It
really
is.
getting at is I want to see what your picture of your head of me is when things aren't going well. Right.
Yeah, and I think, it also helps to strip away some of the common dynamics that I see happening in relationships. If you paint with broad strokes, which is that a lot of times women, and this was part of my beginning story, was part of what was going on with my lack of enthusiasm, is I was treating sex with my husband as another item on my to-do list. I'm doing it
Yeah.
for him because he
Three
wants
times
it
a week.
three
I'm
times a
keeping
week.
track.
I'm
Right.
tracking it. Tick,
Uh-huh.
tick that box. Like,
Uh-huh.
and he sensed that in me. And so it had become almost like something I could get bugged by, like another thing I'm doing for somebody else. And so when a couple will unpack this question, a lot of times what's revealed from the partner who has the higher desire is that when our sex life isn't where I want it to be, it feels like you don't love me. It
Mm-hmm.
feels like you don't desire me and want me. And I think that is a conversation that couples really need to have, because it offers a different perspective. It's not like, oh, it's this animalistic desire you have. It's actually not even necessary. I talk about sex sometimes like people treat it like the appendix of relationships. Like you just remove
Uh-huh.
it and everything's fine. Like I do everything else for you. Aren't you fine? And so
Uh-huh.
when they have this conversation, you can really see sort of like the heart of the matter, how sex really is a pathway to connection, how it's a pathway of feeling loved and safe in your relationship for a lot of people, and how it needs to be mutually owned in the relationship. And so, to come full circle, part of what I had to do in my own relationship with my husband Chad was that I had to really shift my sort of thinking and my behavior around sex to not be something I do for him, but something I do with him that I get enjoyment and pleasure out of too. And when I could step into that more and he could step into, you know, really clearly expressing how important this was to him
Mm-hmm.
feeling good in our relationship and like I loved and cared for him. And he stepped into our relationship sort of management and home life more. It made it easier also for me to find my desire. And so I think that's a really important piece couples need to kind of like peel away to get at the heart of what's going on in our sex life.
That's good. Very, very good. Where can people go to learn more about your work, buy your book, and all those good things?
Yeah, so my book is out and you can get it basically at any major retailer, Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, Target. It's also on Audible, so I was the narrator, and on Spotify. And you can learn more about me on my website, drmorgancutlip.com, or Instagram, it's Dr. Morgan Cutlip.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Please share it, along with our apps Intimately Us and Just Between Us, with your married friends. I promise they will thank you for life. If you want a more meaningful, sexual, and intimate connection in your marriage, I invite you to check out my Get Your Marriage On program. Over 100 couples have said this program packs tremendous value and has helped their intimacy grow to the next level. Now, go get your marriage on.